It all began, my brothers and sisters, with a whisper. Just a single line, hidden deep inside a secret telegram. Yet that line carried the weight of nations, the sound of empires trembling, the cry of a continent rising. A demand had been made, ruthless, cold, without mercy. Hand over 70% of your gold or surrender $5.6 billion you do not have. 48 hours to decide. And the signature at the bottom? Donald J. Trump. The leader of the free world. The voice of the G7. The iron fist behind the IMF. But in the dust and the heat of Burkina Faso, a young captain named Ibrahim Traoré heard those words not as a command, but as an insult. He did not flinch. He did not bow. He stood as one man, carrying the burden of millions, carrying the dream of Africa itself. And what unfolded in those 2 days shook the palaces of Paris, the boardrooms of New York, and the halls of Washington. Stay with me, family. Do not turn away. If you want the truth beyond the headlines, subscribe now, because what you are about to hear is not just history, it is prophecy unfolding before our very eyes. What did Captain Traoré do when the empire demanded his gold? My beloved brothers and sisters, hear me now. It began not in the open sunlight, but in the shadows of secrecy. A telegram hand-delivered, placed upon the desk of Captain Ibrahim Traoré at exactly 6:30 in the morning, 12th of August, 2025. A piece of paper, yes, but also a dagger wrapped in velvet. The words were sharp, the tone was iron. Surrender 70% of your nation's gold or pay $5.6 billion within 48 hours. No compromise, no discussion, no appeal to reason or justice. And whose name sealed this ultimatum? None other than Donald J. Trump. At that time, the most powerful man on earth. The President of the United States. The voice of the G7. The hand that guided the International Monetary Fund. This was not negotiation. This was extortion, dressed up as diplomacy. The message was wrapped in arrogance, and the words dripped with empire. We saved you from terror. We fed you when you were hungry. We lent you money. Now pay your debts, or pay the price. But listen, church, because the story does not end there. The West thought this soldier from Ouagadougou would tremble, would kneel, and would beg for mercy. They believed that because they held the purse strings, they held his soul. But they miscalculated. Captain Ibrahim Traoré did not tremble. He did not bow. Instead, he called his council together. Generals, ministers, miners, the men and women who carried the heartbeat of Burkina Faso. And when they gathered, he spoke with the clarity of a prophet. Tell the G7, tell the IMF, Burkina Faso is not for sale. Even as he spoke, rumors swirled across the continent. From Lagos to Kinshasa, headlines shouted, "The West demands Africa's gold. Burkina Faso given 2 days." But while the world speculated, Traoré was already moving with the precision of a soldier and the faith of a shepherd. For months he had hidden a secret deep beneath the scorched plains of the north. Not a rumor, not speculation. Fact, a massive treasure of mineral wealth, confirmed by his own clandestine geological task force. The files are encrypted, sealed by North Korean codebreakers, and while satellites hovered, while spies whispered, the truth remained under Burkina soil. Until the drills bit the earth and the ground sang of gold, the West saw it. Their satellites traced the shipments from Iran, from Venezuela. Their analysts reported strange signals rising from the desert. And suddenly, the secret was no longer hidden. They knew Burkina Faso had taken back its gold from foreign corporations. They knew the profits were no longer flowing into Parisian vaults or Wall Street ledgers. They were being redirected into a national fund, a sovereign future, and that, my family, was the real crime in the eyes of the empire. Not that Burkina Faso had gold, but that Burkina Faso dared to control it. Traore understood this was never about debt. It was about domination. It was about killing the idea that Africa could rise on her own terms, stand on her own feet, mine her own wealth without bowing to Europe or America. So the ultimatum came: 48 hours. Pay the debt or lose the gold. And if he refused, sanctions, blockades, destabilization, regime change. In other words, the same tools they had used in Libya, in Iraq, in nation after nation that dared to say no. But here is where the story turns. For Captain Ibrahim Traoré was not simply a head of state. He was a soldier forged in fire, a leader with the heart of his people in his chest. When he read that telegram, he did not see fear. He saw clarity. He saw destiny. And so he began to prepare. Orders whispered through the night: secure the convoys, lock the oil fields, guard the mines, cut the data lines to foreign contractors, silence the spies. For when the sun rose over Ouagadougou, the game would no longer be in secret. It would be before the eyes of the world. And I tell you, beloved, in that moment, Africa held its breath. Would the young captain surrender to the empire? Would he kneel as so many before him had been forced to kneel? Or would he rise and risk everything, his life, his nation, his very bloodline, for the promise of freedom? The clock was ticking. 48 hours. What would Captain Ibrahim Traoré say to the might of America, to the weight of the IMF, to the arrogance of the G7? Beloved brothers and sisters, the moment came when silence could no longer serve. The ultimatum lay upon the desk, its words heavy as chains. The West demanded his gold, demanded his obedience, demanded his silence. But Captain Ibrahim Traoré chose another path. He chose to speak. There was no lavish stage, no polished set, no glittering lights, just a soldier in uniform, one hand upon the flag of Burkina Faso, the other clutching a folder marked with the fate of a nation. The cameras rolled. The screen turned black. And then his face appeared, steady as the earth, sharp as a blade. His words cut like thunder across the airwaves. They are not simply demanding 70% of our gold, they are demanding the fear within us. To Mr. Trump and to his supporters, hear me well. You have underestimated us. We are not Libya. We are not Iraq. We are not your playground. You gave us 2 days. Here is our answer. Now you have 2 days to take your greed, your threats and your arrogance, and leave African soil. Oh, the silence that followed. It was the silence of history being written. And then, as though a dam had broken, cheers rose from Ouagadougou to Dar es Salaam, from Dakar to Kinshasa. The young captain had spoken, and his words carried not only through his own land, but across the whole continent. But while the streets erupted in song and dance, boardrooms in New York and Paris trembled with fear. At ExxonMobil, emergency calls lit the night. At Halliburton, men in suits whispered damage reports. In Langley, Virginia, CIA officers leaned forward, their screens glowing red. For Traoré had committed the one act empire could not forgive. He had said no, and he had said it in public. And so the war of shadows began. Smear campaigns flowed like a river. CNN called him reckless. Fox News called him dangerous. Opinion writers painted him as unstable, unfit, a dictator in uniform. On social media, bots whispered lies, creating scandals, manufacturing outrage. Near the borders, private contractors moved like ghosts, ready to strike from within. But the people of Burkina Faso were not fooled. For every headline that mocked him, young voices rose in laughter. For every insult, songs of resistance filled the air. University students spoke of sovereignty. Women carried food and water to the soldiers guarding the mines. And the youth, oh, the youth, turned propaganda into protest songs, mocking the empire with their own rhythm, their own fire. Traore understood that this was no longer about one man. It was about the soul of Africa. And so, the National Assembly of Burkina Faso gathered behind closed doors. With urgency and unity, they passed a historic resolution. All gold reserves within Burkina Faso are hereby nationalized and permanently protected from foreign corporate ownership. The ink had barely dried before foreign contractors were escorted to the border. Mining licenses revoked. Energy survey teams dismissed. Letters delivered to embassies, clear and sharp. Our resources are not your bargaining chips. Our land is not your debt repayment. And then came the second fire. Traore appeared again before his people, this time not in uniform, but clothed in the traditional garments of his ancestors. His voice is calm, his eyes fierce. We have been exploited for generations. Now, having discovered our wealth, they come again to take it away. But hear me clearly, I am not here to serve empires. I am here to serve my people. And to the thieves in suits and ties, know this. Burkina Faso is not afraid. I will not negotiate with robbers. And the streets roared. Drums thundered. Fireworks cracked in the night sky. Crowds chanted, "He said no, he said no, he said no." My family, this was the moment of transformation. Captain Ibrahim Traoré was no longer just a president, no longer just a soldier. He had become a symbol, a living testament that Africa could stand tall, unbroken, unbought, unbowed. But hear me well, the empire does not sleep. Washington seethed, Paris plotted, London whispered, and across the ocean, Trump himself took to his platform, typing in rage, "Traoré just made the biggest mistake of his life. Africa will pay for this." The world held its breath. The markets shook. Satellites shifted over West Africa. The clock of the empire began to tick louder. With the West enraged, the CIA circling, and Trump vowing revenge, could one young captain truly stand against the storm of nations? My brothers and sisters, when one man says no to an empire, the echo can become a thunder across nations. Captain Ibrahim Traoré's defiance did not remain within the borders of Burkina Faso. No, it leapt beyond the desert, across rivers and savannas, into the hearts of millions. For on that day, a new covenant was spoken in Africa, not by treaties signed in marble halls, but by soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder. From Mali came Colonel Assimi Goïta, calm and resolute. From Niger came General Abdourahmane Chiani, eyes alight with determination. From Guinea came Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, tall and unbending. They walked into the palace at Ouagadougou, not as visitors, but as brothers. And when they emerged, their voices joined as one. If you touch Burkina Faso, you touch all of us. Hear me well, that was more than a statement. That was a doctrine, Africa's answer to NATO, the birth of the AES shield. Suddenly, the equation had changed. No longer was Burkina Faso standing alone. No longer could the West whisper threats of regime change without facing a united front. Mali sent seasoned advisors to guard the gold mines. Niger dispatched logistics units skilled in the harsh terrain of the Sahel. Guinea opened its skies for emergency flights, pledging airspace for brothers in arms. The battle spread not only across deserts, but across the digital front lines. With fury and precision, AES-backed media launched a counter-offensive. They tore down the lies of Western headlines, exposing the hunger for gold and the greed behind the IMF's smile. On social media, one cry rang out in unison: "Our resources, our future, our fight." And the people answered. In Bamako, crowds filled the streets in jubilation, waving flags, singing songs of sovereignty. In Conakry, murals blossomed on city walls, bright with colors of freedom. Paintings of Traore standing upon barrels of oil, lifting the flag high as a beacon. From Chad to the Central African Republic, youth movements rose, chanting in one voice, "AAS or death." Oh, family, do you feel it? The fire spreading? Because in those days, Africa was no longer silent. Africa was no longer divided. The young and the old, men and women, students and farmers, they were all proclaiming the same truth. Africa is not for sale. And as this fire spread, two mighty shadows stepped quietly onto the stage. Not with arrogance, not with ultimatums, but with outstretched hands. From the east came China, not with armies, but with engineers and builders. They proposed a fully operational mining facility in 90 days. They offered a gold valuation system beyond Western banks, and most powerful of all, they brought a digital trade platform powered by the digital yuan. No CFA franc, no US dollar, no colonial strings attached. And then came Russia. A military jet landed discreetly, its cargo marked with only 2 words: special assets. Inside lay advanced electronic warfare systems, anti-drone defenses, the shield Burkina Faso needed against the watchful eyes in the sky. The West raged. Washington accused Traore of selling out to dictatorships. Paris fumed, London fretted. But in Africa, nobody cared for those words, for the people did not see chains. They saw tools, they did not see masters, they saw allies. By this point, Captain Ibrahim Traoré had achieved what many thought impossible. He had not only rejected the ultimatum, he had not only defended his gold, he had turned Burkina Faso into a symbol, a flame carried in the hands of millions. CNN called him dangerous. Fox News called him reckless. The IMF called him irresponsible. But on the streets of Ouagadougou, the people called him something else. They called him leader. They called him hope. They called him the proof that Africa could stand. And so, the empire trembled. Not because of bullets, not because of bombs, but because of an idea. For ideas, once born, cannot be unborn. And this idea, that Africa belongs to Africans, was rising like the dawn. But the West was not finished. The CIA moved in silence. Propaganda sharpened its knives. Satellites gathered in the sky. The question, my family, is this: can one captain, one alliance, truly withstand the fury of empires? I ask you, do you believe this is the moment Africa finally breaks free from the chains of neo-colonialism? Comment your thoughts below. My brothers and sisters, when the lion roars, the hunters tremble. And make no mistake, Washington heard the roar of Captain Ibrahim Traoré. They did not hear weakness, they heard defiance. They did not see a puppet, they saw a soldier who had cut the strings. The response came quickly. Screens lit up across America. CNN blared with urgency. Burkina Faso refuses to pay dirty debt. Fox News fumed. This young captain must be stopped before others follow his path. On talk shows, retired generals and bankers spoke in one voice, warning that Traoré was dangerous, reckless, the next Gaddafi. And then came the tweet. Sharp. Venomous. Written in the language of anger. Donald J. Trump, fingers pounding the keys, declared in all caps, Traore just made the biggest mistake of his life. Africa will pay for this. Oh, the markets trembled. In New York, investors pulled their hair. Gold prices spiked. Oil futures swayed. The dollar shivered under the weight of uncertainty. Across the Atlantic, Paris grew restless. London whispered caution. Brussels fidgeted in silence. But let me tell you the truth. While Western capitals drowned in panic, Africa was breathing for the first time in generations. For in Ouagadougou, the people did not see Trump's rage as a threat. They saw it as confirmation. Confirmation that their leader had struck into the very heart of the empire. Yet the world beyond Africa looked with wary eyes. China and Russia stepped carefully, speaking not with fire, but with quiet support. India watched from a distance, calculating its own future. South America nodded in recognition, remembering its own battles with debt, with dictatorships in suits and ties. But Europe and America, oh, they could not hide their fear. For what terrified them was not just Burkina Faso's gold. It was the idea, spreading like wildfire, that Africa could refuse, resist, and rise. And so, behind closed doors, new plots were drawn. Sanctions drafted, intelligence briefings sharpened, drones redirected. For in the minds of Western leaders, Burkina Faso was no longer a small, landlocked nation. It was a spark that threatened to ignite the whole continent. And so, the question burns before us, family, will this spark become a flame of freedom, or will the empire smother it before it consumes the world? My beloved family, let us lift our eyes from the battles of today and look toward the horizon. For every struggle carries within it the seed of tomorrow. And what Captain Ibrahim Traoré began in the dust of Ouagadougou is no longer just a fight for one nation. It has become a blueprint, a vision, a road forward for all of Africa. From that moment of defiance was born something mighty, the AES Shield. Not a treaty signed by foreign hands, not a pact enforced by distant armies, but a brotherhood forged in fire. Mali, Niger, Guinea, they did not send words of sympathy. They sent soldiers, engineers, and open skies. Together they stood, saying in one voice, "Touch one of us, and you touch us all." The movement did not stop there. Across Africa, young voices rose like a choir. Africa is not for sale. It became the anthem of students, the cry of workers, the prayer of mothers. On social media, the slogans spread like wildfire, carried by diaspora communities in London, Paris, New York. Even African Americans, weary of centuries of oppression, lifted their voices in solidarity. We see you. We stand with you. And so, the captain who once stood alone was no longer alone. He had become a symbol, not just for Burkina Faso, but for an entire continent, yearning for dignity. Even Time magazine, that voice of Western prestige, was forced to acknowledge it. The man the West cannot bully. But let us not be naive, my brothers and sisters. Symbols are powerful, yes, but they are also dangerous. The higher one rises, the sharper the arrows aimed at his heart. Traoré may have united millions, but he has also painted a target upon his back. Assassins lurk. Coups are whispered. Proxy wars wait like wolves in the shadows. Still, the path forward is clear. Africa must guard its resources. Africa must strengthen its alliances. Africa must teach its children that their soil is not a debt payment, but a divine inheritance. And Africa must stand ready for the empire will not stop. And so the question, beloved, is this. Will Captain Ibrahim Traoré live long enough to lead Africa into this new dawn? Or will the empire strike before the sun can rise? My family, we have walked together through the fire of this story. We have seen the telegram, the ultimatum, the arrogance of the empire. We have witnessed the courage of a soldier who said, "No more." We have watched a continent rise, a brotherhood form, and the seeds of a new Africa planted in the soil of Burkina Faso. This is more than politics. This is more than economics. This is the cry of a people who have carried chains for centuries and now declare with one voice, "We will not bow. We will not sell. We will not surrender." Captain Ibrahim Traoré did not only protect his nation's gold, he protected its soul. He showed the world that dignity is worth more than dollars, that sovereignty is worth more than promises, and that freedom is worth more than fear. And because of that, his name has spread across the earth, not in shame, but in glory. From the streets of Ouagadougou to the screens of New York, his defiance has become a headline. Yes, my brothers and sisters, search the news today and you will see it. Ibrahim Traoré, news shaking the very foundations of the empire. But do not be deceived. The struggle is not over. Washington still plots. Paris still whispers. The IMF still waits with its contracts of debt. Yet, in the hearts of millions, the answer is already clear. Africa is awake. Africa is rising. And no force on earth can put her back to sleep. So I ask you, beloved, do you believe this is the dawn of true independence? Do you believe the courage of one captain can light the way for a whole continent? Or will the empire strike again, desperate to reclaim what it has lost? Your voice matters. Speak it in the comments. Share this story so the world knows that Africa is not for sale. And if you seek the truth beyond the noise, stay with us, subscribe, and let your light shine with ours. Because this is not the end. This is only the beginning. And if you look closely, beyond the headlines, beyond the fear, you will find the prophecy unfolding. Ibrahim Traoré News. Burkina Faso News, a new chapter of history being written by African hands.